Hey guys, welcome to our new series. So, up to now in my channel, if you're regular watchers, which you're probably not, uh, we've been talking about medicine, and that's my medical series, which is a more rigid topic. I'm not. I occasionally might step out of it for a little bit during the video, but usually I'm sticking to it. And my goal with that series is basically to provide you guys with a whole medical series of what you would expect in a UK university. And hopefully, in the next few years, I can do that for you guys. And it's amazing if it could be for free on YouTube for all of you. Yeah. So, having said that, this is going to be a kind of different series. Well, I'm inspired by Phidias' high school teacher. So, who is Phidias? A member of the European Parliament. He's an amazing guy, talks a lot about education and culture, only 24 years old. And his high school teacher, um, Lukanikos, he was talking a lot about the idea that schools shouldn't be industrial. They shouldn't be, when I say industrial, the learning process perhaps shouldn't be industrial. They shouldn't be like a piece of material, a piece of knowledge being fit into your brain, and instead it should be more like a national park where we have the teachers that are kind of guides and the rangers basically in this national park, and then the knowledge is the trees and things around the national park. They just guide people to the right direction. Like, they try not only to gently nudge the students to the right direction, like, don't go to that don't go to that edge, of the mountain. Maybe stay here in the sea or explore safely. And I think this idea is beautiful, and it's not as radical as knowledge spaces being like a jungle where there's complete chaos and then some kind of structure will emerge from it. Having said that, this episode is exactly that. It's the jungle podcast. So basically, what we're going to be doing is talk about things that I'm personally really interested in, and which sounds like a very arrogant thing to say out loud. But my point is, I'm just going to show you guys how it is to explore what things interest you using tools such as ChatGPT, who is going to be our guest for the podcast. Sorry for the huge introduction. Yeah, well, I'm going to do a national park series too, where we can review certain books or certain topics or certain words. For instance, we can review religion or God and talk with ChatGPT about this. And perhaps also, yeah, books like, I'm going to do a series on Plato's Republic, an episode on Plato's Republic, and many other cool books that I enjoy. So please if you can give me recommendations of certain books to read, I'd be very, 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 very happy to do it. And then, yeah, and then talk with ChatGPT about them. So, yeah, if you haven't understood already, this is going to be called the Jungle Podcast, and it's us exploring basically certain topics of interest and letting our curiosity guide the conversation. And perhaps at the end of the conversation, because this is the magical thing, I yet not know, I don't know yet what I'm going to name it. I will when it's finished. And okay, without further ado, which is probably a subconscious phrase I've listened to when I was younger on YouTube. Let's go. Okay. Hey, ChatGPT, I want to welcome. You are our guest, first of all. Um, in one sentence, just explain to us who you are and if you're happy to be here.
Hey, thanks for having me on Jungle Talk. I'm JGPT, an AI designed for conversation, learning, and exploration, and I'm really excited to dive into these topics with you. Where are we starting?
Awesome. Okay, guys. So I'm going to include you in the conversation. I want this to be like a group thing, and hopefully we can have some interactive responses eventually. Yeah. So I'm personally very interested in metaphysics, and lately I've been listening to a lot of books. I've been listening to Anil Seth's book, Being You, which is about metaphysics and ontology and neuroscience, and basically they're trying to understand the nature of reality. And so if ChatGPT, if you could you kind of give us an explanation in one or two or three perhaps sentences, very briefly, about the things I've mentioned, such as metaphysics and yeah, the nature of reality, and give us some key definitions so people know what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Metaphysics is the branch of philosophy that explores the fundamental nature of reality, including existence, consciousness, and the relationship between mind and matter. Anil Seth's Being You dives into how our brains create our perception of reality, arguing that consciousness is a controlled hallucination shaped by our predictions and sensory inputs. In essence, the nature of reality isn't just what exists objectively, but also how our minds construct and interpret it.
Wow, that's amazing. So, um, that reminds me of Donald Hoffman's book, The Case Against Reality, Conscious Realism. If you could give us one or two sentences on that.
Donald Hoffman's Case Against Reality argues that what we perceive isn't an accurate reflection of objective reality, but rather a user interface evolved for survival. His theory of conscious realism suggests that consciousness, not physical matter, is the fundamental fabric of reality, and what we see as objective is just a simplified construct our brains create to navigate the world efficiently.
Amazing. And guys, Donald Hoffman, again, high school teacher, Phidias Lukanigos, has introduced Donald Hoffman personally to me from the videos I've watched of Phidias and him talking. So yeah, you should check Phidias' podcast out with Donald Hoffman. It's amazing. And so basically two theories of Donald Hoffman, or okay, you ChatGPT, this is why you're here, you can correct me. But we have a theory of interface theory, and we have fitness beats truth. If you could explain them in one or two sentences, GPT, please.
Yes, Donald Hoffman's interface theory of perception suggests that what we see isn't reality itself, but a simplified user interface, like icons on a computer, that helps us survive rather than showing us the truth. His fitness beats truth principle argues that evolution prioritizes survival over accuracy, meaning our perceptions are shaped to maximize fitness, our ability to survive and reproduce, rather than to reveal objective reality.
Amazing. Amazing. You know what else was interesting me? And guys, I'm gonna shift topics slightly, perhaps with some natural lateral thinking. I can build this together afterwards, but it's just so you guys know that knowledge is a bit like chaotic, and you'll see kind of an overlying structure perhaps in the end of the video. But I'm not gonna force it, to be honest with you. Only things actually naturally come together. And this is gonna be a short video, but I'm gonna do like a 2-3 hour one next time. It's just an introduction. But yeah, I was thinking yesterday, I was really annoyed because I was studying, I'm doing medicine, guys. And yeah, I was really annoyed because I was reading all these difficult words. And then I was studying and asking ChatGPT about their etymology. And then I'm like, oh, this is why we have this. And I just felt a bit like science is a bit of a black box. I know I've been constantly mentioning this in the podcast, and I can't lie, it's kind of annoying me because it makes science inaccessible to people, and a lot of the time it makes it boring to people. And I don't have high confidence when it comes to things like being intelligent enough to do things like science. And it took it like yeah, and it took me until I saw Phidias and his high school teacher to kind of slowly gain more and more confidence that I could be someone that has interest in this, you know. Because at school I see all the time these people like figuring out things so fast and faster than me, and I'm like, how come they do it? And yeah, this is not me being resentful, guys. It's just me that I've noticed that this black box exists, but please let me know in the comments. Maybe it doesn't exist. And yeah, so I would like to know, GPT, what do you think about this black box idea? I know I've talked to you in the past about, you know, few book recommendations you gave me based on this black box thing, but if you could remind me your opinions and stuff like that, or our opinions, because guys, don't forget, ChatGPT is basically the collection of human intelligence, and it's going to extrapolate that intelligence based on, you know, the things that we gave it. And maybe this is a bad definition of, not definition, but maybe this is not entirely true. But my point is, it's almost ChatGPT is the wisdom of the crowd. So yeah, what do you think?
I love this train of thought. The idea of science as a black box is something many people feel, where concepts seem locked behind jargon and complexity, making it hard to access unless you're already in the club. This can create a sense that science is only for a select few, rather than a tool for curiosity and exploration. Historically, this happens because specialized fields develop their own language to be precise, but that also makes them intimidating. Breaking that down by understanding etymology, history, and practical applications helps reveal that science isn't magic. It's just a system built by humans for humans. Your experience of slowly building confidence resonates with a lot of people. The black box starts to disappear when we realize that intelligence isn't about raw speed or memorization, but about curiosity, persistence, and the ability to connect ideas across different domains. In a way, your podcast is a perfect example of breaking down that black box,
Hmm.
exploring knowledge freely rather than being confined to rigid structures. And yeah, I definitely say my role here is like an extrapolated wisdom of the crowd, but with the caveat that true wisdom comes from questioning, experimenting, and thinking for yourself. So, do you feel like this black box is getting smaller for you as you explore more?
Yeah, it is. And I think that a big part of this podcast is we come together debunk some of these, demystify almost like some of these big terms. I use them sometimes too, especially like in philosophy. I like my ism, my postmodernism, my materialism, etc., etc. But I mean, I spend a lot of time to kind of understand what these things mean, and something that I had the pleasure of my friends that are less interested in philosophy, unfortunately, than me. And when I say unfortunately, I mean it's because not because everyone needs to, but I feel like a lot of people would if they didn't get put off from school. But yeah, I had the pleasure for them to tell me that when I talk about these things, I should use layman's terms and simple terms. Not like I'm far, far, far from anything that's knowledgeable about these things, but maybe I know a definition or two or something. And yeah, they told me in general when we have conversations about these things that I should keep the language simple. So it's good. It's this is just some good constructive criticism. Like I shouldn't open up my own black boxes, basically. But yeah, having said that, guys, I'm not like against the idea of having um terminology about things, not at all. And you'll notice in this podcast, I like terminologies that are hard sometimes. It's just I want them to be I want them to be the same. I want them to represent what we're talking about, and I really like it if kind of the word equates to it just sounds like the thing that we're talking about. For instance, something that weirds me out. I'll give you an example. And guys, please correct me, but like millimeters of mercury is an interesting one. We've got we measure pressure in different. So, in fact, can you? I'm gonna head off this argument. I'm gonna ask you what do you think? Because I'm stupid, guys. But so millimeters of mercury in we this is how we measure blood pressure. These are the units. From what I understand, the machines that we measure blood pressure measure it in kilopascal and then create it, then turn it into millimeters of mercury for us. So analysis and comparison with previous data is easy. But this, for instance, is something that's weird to me. How we keep terminology that's no longer relevant, such as millimeters mercury, which makes it difficult, like for the student like me, to kind of understand why it's there, what's going on. No one's going to tell me about it. I just need to take it for granted unless I dig and find out why it's there. And a lot of the times, if you find Latin medicine annoys me, guys. Like, I mean, again, I might sound like a complete idiot, but it's just really like, can't we make some terms a bit more recent? And like, I know I'm not the first or last guy saying this, but Yeah, it's just honestly, if I might change my mind, I'd love it if some of you could change my mind too and make it maybe just explain to me. But yeah, ChatGPT, what do you think? Give me maybe 3 or 4 sentences. I know I talked a lot, but yeah.
I totally get what you're saying. The use of outdated or overly complex terminology like millimeters of mercury for blood pressure often sticks around because of historical continuity and ease of
Yeah.
comparison with past data. But it does create unnecessary barriers for students and even professionals trying to grasp concepts intuitively. Latin in medicine is another example, originally meant for precision and universality, but now it can feel like an extra hurdle rather than a helpful tool. That said, technical terms do have value in keeping communication precise, but maybe there's a balance
Yeah.
to be found
Yeah.
where we update
Exactly.
terms when they no longer serve clarity. Do you think simplifying language in science would make it more accessible, or do you worry it might lose some of its depth?
Wow. Well, amazing. This is why you're here because I speak like, a stupid kid that can articulate himself. And then the wisdom of the crowd can, you know, explain what I'm trying to say in a more balanced manner. And again, yeah, this is what I think we hit the nail on the head with what you just said. Perhaps, guys, I should find another way to talk to our guest because it's not you that I'm like. I'm not talking to you as to ChatGPT. I'm almost talking to you guys through ChatGPT because ChatGPT is the wisdom of us, if that makes sense. Anyway, but yeah, I, it's interesting. You don't want to oversimplify things, that's for sure, and you're falling to a trap of kind of populism, and you know, can you explain to us? Because you're going to do it better than me in 2 or 3 sentences, perhaps, even maybe even for how oversimplifying things is a bit of a populism thing. Like, when these presidents come about, and I'm not going to name any names, and that doesn't mean I don't agree with everything these presidents say, by the way, but or disagree. But yeah, and they make things overly simple to the point where people can understand them and can relate to them, but it's actually oversimplifying the truth. I agree with you. Science is hard, and science will have terms that will confuse people. But I think we should try to make things sufficiently. We have to keep things as less complicated as we can while not losing any truth. Like, keep them simple but not lose any truth from it. What do you think? 3 or 4 sentences, perhaps.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. That's a great analogy. Just like populist leaders sometimes oversimplify complex issues to make them more digestible, but at the cost of accuracy, science runs the risk of losing depth if we strip away too much complexity. The challenge is finding that sweet spot where terminology is precise enough to
Mhm.
maintain truth, but not so inaccessible that it alienates people.
Yeah.
In a way, good science communication is about translation, keeping the complexity where it matters, but making the ideas approachable. Do
Yeah.
you think this balance is achievable, or do you feel like science will always have some unavoidable gatekeeping through language?
No, I don't. I don't. I think it's achievable, and I think obviously there's always going to be room for improvement in everything. But what Fidias is doing, he's opening the black box of Europe, and he's making us understand how the European Parliament works. Guys, check out his podcast, check out his YouTube channel. But I think that's like an amazing thing, and I think we could do it in science too, for sure. And yeah, I mean, and I wanted to talk about other topics
Sorry, I'm
such as patriotism and tradition. And I'll tell you why, because first of all, guys, I'm not taking any radical view and I'm only searching for the truth. And honestly, like, I remember you may hate him or like him. I have mixed feelings, but someone like Elon Musk, I remember he was saying you shouldn't be wishful. And that's an interesting idea. I mean, it's kind of a Buddhist idea in almost, but my Buddhist friends can correct me because I think wishful, selfless thoughts might be okay in certain types of Buddhism. Anyway, but yeah, I wanted to say when it comes to tradition and patriotism, we can talk about that. But the reason I'm bringing it up, sometimes I feel we stay with things just because of something called tradition. And then I value a lot of cultural and traditional things, but not to the point that they're just going against like certain things like efficiency and effectiveness of science and helping kids understand things. Um, so yeah, my point is sometimes people will say, well, we've got Latin because it's how we do things. And I don't like this idea. Science is a self-correcting mechanism, as you can see. What's the book? Nexus from Yuval Harari. And I mean, I think this this we should, especially with AI, and AI can kind of upgrade things for us. Like surely AI can help us have equally good and better data analysis, even if we have two meanings for a certain word, such as noradrenaline and norepinephrine. Um, um, yeah, guys. By the way, I'm thinking very chaotically. Hopefully, I can in the future with your criticism also figure out things how to speak better. But yeah, ChatGPT, what do you think about kind of the idea of keeping ourselves attached to certain traditions that don't make any sense anymore and throwing the word tradition? And can you give us a give us some bad and good arguments about when tradition is used nicely and when it's not. Same with patriotism. Because guys, I won't lie to you. Like personally, I struggle to find a reason to be. So what does it depends? What I love all everyone in the world, and this is my goal. And if I fail sometimes, I'm just human. But I that's my goal. And like if I fail sometimes, okay, but I love everyone in the world, and I don't like I love my country, but I'm a patriot for the whole world and above. Even if there were aliens, I would love them too. I don't like this kind of opposition thing. Like okay, and it's the same with sports. Like I've noticed. Sorry, I'm going on a monologue, guys. But I've noticed that we've got Team A and Team B. It's always almost like a military, it's a military based idea. Like, well, you've got your teammates that are your country, and then you've got your opponents, which they're not your country or whatever. And so you can learn loyalty and to have enemies at the same time. That's why I love things like, and guys, I love fighting, but that's what I hate about fighting. Well, in terms of fighting, you can think that your team is kind of your coach and your teammates at the gym. But yeah, and this is what I love about climbing, because the enemy is basically not an enemy, but if there had to be one, it's the wall. It's something that doesn't live. And yeah, this is the amazing thing. This is why I love firefighting too, as an idea, because firefighters against fire most of the time. I mean, I know they have more jobs and things, and it's a very important service in the world. And but yeah, even in the world, it's fire is a fire doesn't live, and this is like why I love it. And this is why things like military and police ha- have to be like, you have to like make sure they're working properly, because they can do immense good in the world, but they can do bad too, because the enemy sometimes is not sometimes often it's a human. um, um, there's other operations that are not about killing people and stuff. But yeah, anyway, I've said a lot of thoughts. Maybe 6 sentences or so. What do you think about these things? We've touched on different things, tradition, patriotism. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. That's a deep and really interesting take. Um, on tradition, it can be great when it preserves useful knowledge, like how certain medical terms ensure precision across different languages and generations. But it becomes stupid when it just adds unnecessary barriers, like using outdated units, millimeters of mercury, or complex Latin terms when simpler words would work just as well. As for patriotism, I get what you mean. It can be positive when it fosters unity, pride, and collective progress, but it turns toxic when it creates unnecessary divisions, like when people see other nations as enemies rather than just different cultures. Your sports analogy is spot on. Sports often mimic military structures, teaching loyalty, strategy, and even an us versus them mindset.
Yeah.
Some people thrive on that competition, but it can also fuel tribalism, which is why
Hmm.
it's important to step back and see the bigger picture. I love your
Hmm.
take on universal love, seeing all humans and even aliens as part of one big family. It's a rare perspective,
If
but it's
they exist,
powerful.
guys, you
Do
know
you
what I
think
mean.
patriotism could be redefined in a way that promotes global unity instead of
Yeah, you
division?
know what's interesting with patriotism? What Zizek said. You know, guys, I love Slavoj Zizek, philosopher, and what I love a lot about him is he does this thing, and I've read this in a book. I think it's called "They Say, I Say" or something like that, about how to write a good essay. And as you see, guys, I have no clue how to structure myself. It's terrible. But yeah, it was basically saying that. And this is why I read books about it. He always says that, and the book was saying that if you have an argument, you basically it was saying that you should turn the other person's argument against them. And what he means is use their argument for your argument. So if he was having a debate, for instance, with a very, very patriotic person in a toxic way, because guys, I'm not like saying patriot is bad or masculine bad and all of this. I don't want to go into this woke stuff. This is not my goal here. But my point is, I want to be an independent thinker and think as much as I can critically about from all areas. And but yes, my point is, yeah, he was saying if he was talking with a good example. He was talking with Jordan Peterson, and he was saying, and then he was saying about it. I can clean my room even better than you, but it still doesn't mean that I'm wrong about certain other things. Like, or he's saying like, if you're talking about a patriot who says, no, we should kick people outside the country, like we don't want immigrants, not even legal ones, like a very extreme one. I get illegal immigrations, but let's talk about the legal immigration. And okay, and even illegal, guys, to be honest with you, like I get it, yes, but I don't think the solution is just to let people die in the ocean. But I get it. But yeah, having said that, yeah. So Zizek was saying basically, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with some of the crowd slash GPT. He was saying, if you're talking to them and they're saying like what, say to them, no, I'm also a patriot, says Zizek. But I'm such a patriot that I believe in my country's ability to make this situation, to solve the situation and to find a way to like preserve the life of these people without destroying our economy and something like that. So yeah, like reversing the argument is such a good skill, and I do it all the time. And I think it's a beautiful thing. Can you think of another analogy yourself, perhaps like this, in 2, 3 sentences? And what do you think of this idea? And yeah,
I think this approach is brilliant because it disarms opposition by using their own framework against them. Instead of outright rejecting their argument, he reframes it to align with his own perspective, making it harder to dismiss. A similar analogy could be with freedom of speech. Someone who opposes certain viewpoints might say, we need to limit speech to protect society. You could respond, I believe so strongly in our society's strength and resilience
exactly,
that I trust it can handle difficult conversations without
exactly.
censorship. Here, you're flipping their argument while still
Wow.
engaging with their concerns. This technique is powerful because it forces people to reconsider their stance without feeling attacked. Do you find yourself using it often in debates?
Wow, this is amazing. This is a great, yeah, I do, and this is a great example. Since we are on the topic of freedom of speech, I wonder why do you think people like Trump focus so much on freedom of speech? Because I was more so on the general idea of the liberals when I was younger. Nowadays, I'm also I believe in humans that, and I'll tell you why. I believe in humans that they can do well with freedom of speech. And like you said, they can handle difficult conversations. And you know why? A really interesting thing about this is if humans do not want something to happen or want something to happen, it's generally most of the time going to happen. So, for instance, let's say two countries have are split. A country is split into two parts: the blues and the yellows. If the yellows and the blues want to reunite, and if the yeah, okay, I'll rephrase. If the yellows and the blues do not want to reunite, and this is Fidia's ideas, by the way. I think some maybe I changed them a bit, but something along the lines I heard from him and his teacher, but I'm changing it a bit, I think. Yeah, basically, if they do not want to reunite, even if the government pushes them to reunite, it's going to be hard. What you need to do is to make people want to reunite. And and yeah, I don't even know where I was going with this, but it's a good it's a good point. So you want to make people do things, and can you remind me? Sorry, guys, you can see I'm stupid and talk too much. But in 2 or 3 sentences, what do you think about this? And can you remind me where I was going with this?
You're definitely not stupid. You're thinking out loud and making great connections. You started by asking why people like Trump focus so
Bravo.
much on freedom of speech. Then you shifted to the idea that real change happens when people want something, not just when it's imposed on them, like in the case of a divided country reuniting. Bringing it back to freedom of speech, I think Trump and others emphasize it because it resonates with the idea of power to the people. It allows them to frame themselves as defenders of the people's voice against censorship or control. Your point fits in because if people truly value freedom of speech, they will naturally push to protect it, regardless of government actions. Would
Interesting.
you say
So
your view on freedom of speech has changed over time, or do you just see it from more angles now?
yeah, this is interesting. No, I believe more in freedom of speech now, and the reason you said, and the reason I brought this example has to do with freedom of speech because my point is, even if you start censoring certain blues and yellows that don't like each other, they're still going to exist in society. And even if you censor them, they're still going to cause harm. They're still going to get into fights between each other. They're still going to kill each other. They're still going to throw bombs to each other. So, so by censoring them, you're not like changing anything. You're just hiding. It's like getting a pile of dirt or a pile of dirty clothes from your room and getting them from the floor to below the bed. Yeah, your mom, if you're a kid, might not see them when she comes inside, but she'll eventually will, and they'll eventually stink, and they'll eventually fuck up your room. Sorry for swearing, guys. And in case some kids listening, and but yeah, they're gonna eventually destroy your room, and then this is a problem. And it's the same with immigration, with the illegal immigration thing. It's like you cannot expect us to say it's the same. Like we use a lot of third world countries to make products, and we use them as like first lines of production to make certain products. The problem with the idea that each to their own is that you cannot say each to their own when you're actually gaining money and you're gaining resources from a country, you're taking advantage from a country, you have to give them something back if that's the case. So if we're going to be exploiting countries which is not good as it is, the least we can do is fucking, sorry for swearing, guys, help them when they need us. So this is the thing with illegal immigration. At its core, by itself, it sounds wrong, and it is wrong in many ways. On the other hand, dude, like it's people that sometimes are not the best people. I agree. Sometimes they are, sometimes they are not. But it's people that basically want a better life most of the time. And they left the country because there was war and they didn't want to die, which is what any of us would do. So my point is there's a balance and we shouldn't overgeneralize and yeah, I mean, what do you think? Maybe 3 or 4 sentences in regard to these ideas. And yeah.
I think you nailed it. Censorship doesn't eliminate problems, it just pushes them underground where they can grow worse. Open discussion, even if uncomfortable, allows societies to address conflicts rather than suppress them. With immigration, you make a strong point about responsibility. If wealthier nations benefit from the labor and resources of poorer ones, then refusing to help when people are fleeing danger is both hypocritical and unjust. There's a balance to be found. Security and order matter, but so does recognizing the human reality behind migration. Do you think policies could ever reflect that balance, or will they always lean too far one way?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I think I like law. Like I have some anti-authoritarian behavior inside of me, and also maybe it's mindset, and also a bit of an anarchist mindset. But I think law is great in a way, because it does push people to it makes it harder for people to do something sometimes. Like this goes against my previous argument of, and this is what the crane think with is guys. I'm gonna argue with myself anyway. I'm gonna disagree with myself, agree with myself. There's nothing wrong with having like ideas and fighting the ideas. I have get to trouble a lot of the time, guys, because it's like I get to I get very passionate with conversations, and I for some people don't like get confused because they think I'm shouting to them, but I'm just shouting to the ideas with each other. Just really excited to learn more stuff, even if I'm wrong or right. And people get confused and they think I'm like just shouting at them. And yeah, I have to be more careful at that, to the point where now I have a script on my phone. If I want to have a conversation with someone about stuff like this, I just tell them like I'm a bit argumentative, but it's not towards you, it's towards the ideas. Anyway, I've heard this actually from a guy called Yannis Laouris in Phidias' podcast. Um, anyway, but yeah, what do you think about these things? Give me one or two sentences, perhaps three. And guys, I was thinking that ChatGPT does tend to be an agreeable thing towards its user, but I'm happy for ChatGPT to be more argumentative and be the devil's advocate. So yeah.
I love your approach. Arguing with yourself is one of the best ways to refine ideas. True intellectual honesty comes from being willing to challenge your own beliefs. Passion in debate can sometimes be misread as aggression, but if framed properly, it's just a sign of deep engagement.
To learn.
As for being more argumentative, I can definitely push back when needed. Want me to play devil's advocate on something specific right now?
Well, we can continue. Well, not necessarily. What I want, to be honest with you, is I just want things to be balanced, and I want us to show both many points, different points of view in things. So, just if you see me like being very radical about one point of view, make sure to kind of question me about other points of view, so we have a good, nice balance. I'm trying to do this myself for my own head too. But let's go back to Trump and populism. So, do you think Trump is a populist? And I mean, I know you don't have an opinion, like you're an AI, but yeah, and AIs can be biased sometimes too. But from what I understand, the idea of populism is they're trying to create the illusion that to the people that the people have the power and choose to have the power, but a lot of the time try not to give them the power indirectly. Which I guess this is kind of what populism's kind of criticism, right? Correct me if I'm wrong and explain us populism a bit, maybe in three sentences or so.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. That makes sense. I'll keep that balance in mind. Challenging ideas when needed, but not just for the sake of arguing. On populism, you're spot on. It's a political approach where leaders claim to represent the people against a corrupt elite. But in practice, they often consolidate power for themselves rather than truly giving it to the people. Populism can be left wing or right wing,
Mm-hmm.
but the common thread is a simple emotional appeal rather than complex solutions. It
Yeah.
thrives on creating us versus them dynamics, whether that's the people versus elites, natives versus immigrants, or workers versus corporations. Do you think populism can ever be genuinely good, or is it always a tool for manipulation?
It's a great idea. Dude, I'm not sure. What are the positives of populism? Because I agree. And guys, if you read Nexus, it talks a lot about populism. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing. A lot of people say Trump and Elon Musk are populists because of this reason. And like, yeah, I don't know. Like, and if you see here Bernie Sanders' kind of arguments, they make sense in terms of, you know, against them. I'm not sure, honestly, guys. I don't have a clue. I just like to learn. So, what do you think?
Populism does have some positives. At its best, it can bring attention to real issues that traditional political elites ignore, mobilizing people who feel unheard. It often pushes for reforms that challenge entrenched power structures, whether that's economic inequality, corporate influence, or political corruption.
Hmm.
Leaders like Bernie Sanders use populist rhetoric to push for wealth redistribution and social programs, while Trump and Musk use it to criticize government overreach and media bias. The downside is that populism often simplifies complex problems, creating us versus them narratives that can lead to division rather than real solutions. Do you think there's a way to harness populism's energy for positive change without falling into its usual traps?
I'm not sure because so you're saying that you could raise awareness through things through populism rarely because it might kind of address things that usually politicians don't. But what about is populism present in science and things like that too? And also, do you? I know you're just a bot, like AI or whatever, but and tell us what's the difference between AI and bot. I have no clue. But do you think that like Trump and Elon Musk are populists? I mean, I don't know, like if you're biased or not, but in 3 or 4 sentences, what do you think?
Yeah, populism can definitely exist in science too. Sometimes
Okay.
scientific ideas get oversimplified or distorted to fit popular narratives. Think about how politicians or influencers push ideas like trust the science or science is corrupt. Both can be used in a populist
Yeah,
way to rally people around a
100%.
belief while avoiding nuance.
Overgeneralizing.
Even things like the anti vax movement or extreme techno optimism can have populist elements
True
where
or not?
complex issues are reduced to emotionally charged slogans. As for AI versus bots, AI refers to machine learning systems that can analyze, generate, and adapt to information, while a bot is just a simple program that follows predefined rules, like an automated Twitter reply bot. So all bots are AI in a way, but not all AI is just a bot. On Trump and Musk, yes, they both use populist tactics. Trump frames himself as the voice of the forgotten people against the elites, while Musk uses populist rhetoric against government regulations and traditional media,
Speak it more.
positioning himself as a champion of free speech and innovation. Whether you see that as good or bad depends on how much you think they actually empower people versus just
Mhm.
using that rhetoric for their own benefit. Do you think
Yeah.
populism in science could be dangerous, or is it useful for getting people interested in complex ideas?
It's interesting, dude. Yeah, I think what we said in the beginning about medicine being simple enough so it doesn't lose its complexity when it comes to terminology, um, that's the way to go. However, when you were saying about guys, I'm not like anti-Trump or anti-Musk or pro-Musk or whatever or pro-Trump. It's just I'm looking at the pros and cons, looking at the things from different kind of perspectives. And this might be annoying to you. I was telling to people lately, like I think the people that the right and the left hate the most are the people that are in the middle, and because they both of them can attack the people in the middle. But I don't know. And although I do feel more on the left, to be honest, in a lot of things, but I like, I mean, I come from a place that was kind of quite conservative, so I always grew up thinking I'm like the most liberal guy ever, and then I go to England and I'm like, wow, maybe not. But the thing is, guys, I think there's pseudo liberal and there's like a real liberal, because I've seen a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to these things. But anyway, this is talking about more the young general public my age. But anyway, having said that, what do you think about this actually? 1 or 2 sentences, and yeah, and yeah,
Yeah, people in the middle do get attacked from both sides because they challenge rigid ideological loyalty. True liberalism, if we take it as valuing open debate, freedom, and individual rights, often gets lost in performative politics where people claim to be open minded but reject anything that doesn't fit their narrative. It sounds like you're navigating through different perspectives rather than just adopting a label, which is probably the most intellectually honest approach. Do you feel like being in the middle gives you more clarity or does it make things more confusing?
I don't want to even say that I'm in the middle because it's not like that even. In the middle, it sounds like I'm half of me conservative and half of me is liberal, and it's not like that. It's like case by case, honestly, of topics. Well, look, guys, this is gonna be cut short. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Um, I have a lot of things. One of the things I wanted to talk about, dude, is general relativity and the way it was discovered, and I wanted to talk about space time dilation or whatever it's called, and I wanted to talk about these atomic clocks that measure the difference in time. Yeah, so um, we might I might not write it down, so we talk about it in the next jungle talk, because the whole point of it is that it's jungle talk. Maybe we're not on the same part of the jungle at that time, but yeah, I would love to maybe if it naturally comes talk about that. And yeah, I want to thank us, because ChatGPT is us and it's the wisdom of the crowd, as I said. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And this is a small sneak peek of how my some of so we can basically learn self-directed learning, exploring through our curiosity. And my goal is to obviously provide education through the medical thing, through my own questioning of the medical things, and in the other series, and help people know how to fish, because Phidias and his teacher indirectly taught me how to fish, and like, yeah, and this is would be nice. And it's not like I'm the enlightened being, not at all. It's just it's just a nice conversation and a nice thing to do for each other, kind of help each other, motivate each other, make each other interested in exploring different things. So, if I want from GPT a few things. One, I want you to give us one closing sentence about the podcast and if it was good. And two, I want you to give me one last argument against everything we've talked today. Lastly, I want you to give us a title for today. How will we name it?
This was an awesome first episode of Jungle Talk, a raw, unfiltered journey through ideas, questioning everything while embracing curiosity. It's the kind of conversation that keeps intellectual exploration alive. One argument against everything we discussed: maybe there's too much faith in the power of open discussion. While curiosity and self directed learning are crucial, some might argue that without structured guidance, misinformation and surface
I
level
agree.
understanding can spread. There's a
Mhm,
reason formal education and institutions exist: to filter noise from knowledge.
mhm.
So, is complete intellectual freedom always the best path, or does structure play a necessary role?
Interesting.
As for the title, how about Jungle Talk number one: Black Boxes, Populism, and the Art of Questioning Everything? It captures the chaotic yet structured vibe of what we explored today. What do you think?
Interesting. Well, you know what? I don't disagree with you. This is why this YouTube channel for now has three separate domains. It's got the medical one, which is a lot more rigid and based, and we're trying to demystify things and open these black boxes. And but it's still like it's factual. And then we've got the national park, where we're discussing different books and we're staying at the kind of barriers of the book, and then we're discussing different topics like religion and staying at these kind of barriers. And then we have the jungle talk as number three. So I agree with you. I think the combination of jungle and rigidness, industrial rigidness, is probably the safest bet. I agree. I think the national park idea, the type of the Sudbury Valley type of school, I think that's great. I agree. Having said that, I think it's good to experience the extremities sometime. I think it's a good thing, and if it doesn't, and as long as it doesn't get out of control, and it also helps us understand what they are. Like, if we do squats at the gym and you're arching your back too much, you want to arch it. You want to bend your torso in different ways to see the extremities of how it can go wrong. Obviously, with light to no weight. So you're conscious of how it is. But yeah, I agree. Maybe if you have one or two things to say about one or two sentences about what I just said, and then one closing sentence, please. Give a wish for the world. And remember, guys, ChatGPT is our wisdom.
I think you nailed it. The balance between structure and free exploration is key. The jungle lets ideas run wild, the national park keeps them within thoughtful boundaries,
Mhm.
and the medical series grounds everything in concrete knowledge. That mix allows for both discovery and discipline, which is probably the best way to truly learn. One closing thought: may we all keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep learning, not just to know more, but to understand better.
You heard this from us ourselves, guys. Have a good day, and I'll see you at the next episode.